Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Double Your Business Show. I'm your host, Leslie Hassler. I am a business coach with Your Biz Rules Business Coaching, where I love helping women business owners become the hero in their business and, make business a lot more fun and a little bit easier on the way, but also help you get the rewards that should be coming your way as part of being in business, meaning being able to have an income, draw a paycheck, take time with your family, grow and do great work at the same time. So today's guest, you're going to love Marcia. And you know what I love about Marcia is Marcia's business card says Marcia B. What is it? Total badass.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I have to say, I love that. Now, Marcia, I'm going to butcher your name, so I'm going to go ahead and have you say your last name so I get it right.
That's why I say Marcia B on my business card. It's Marcia. It's Baczynski.
Okay, see, I was practicing it, and that was not what I was practicing.
No, most people get it wrong. That's why I changed it. I just, Marcia B.
Marcia B. Well, there you go. Well, Marcia is a sex ed educator and relationship coach, and you're probably going, what are we talking about? What does sex ed and relationship have to do with business? Well, a lot, because I happened to be at a conference with Marcia a few months ago, and she talked about this concept of desire. So as you can probably imagine, her work intimately helps people rekindle desire, and not maybe just rekindle, but actually acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it, yeah, for
acknowledge
sure.
it, right?
Yeah.
And she'll, her in her bio, she says her primary mission is to help people overcome shame and get in touch with what they really want, truly want, romantically, sexually, and relationally, even if it's off the beaten path. Well, I got to tell you what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a lot of things, has everything to do with business. And one of the biggest holes I see, and it's actually probably one of the biggest hurdles I have with helping people become clients, is this whole desire kind of concept. It really comes down to this craving and this want and the belief in it. So, Marcia, I just kind of ad-libbed your bio. Is there anything before we dive in deep that you want to make sure our people know? Because we are going to talk about the Good Girl Recovery.
Okay, good.
That's in there. That's part of it. But, just give a 30-second little spiel for yourself, and then we'll get started.
Well, I guess this is sort of not my formal bio, but why it's relevant for all of y'all listening is that, I've been in business for myself for 13 years or so now. And so I am a sex educator, but on the other hand, I'm also a business owner. And so these things are I talk about this in my work with my clients around sexuality, but I also apply it to my own business all the time. And I'm also a marketing nerd, and desire is completely relevant for your marketing too. So I'm stoked to be here. So that's all I want to add.
I'm reading a new book. It's called The Power of Habits. Mm-hmm. And I totally geek out on some of these business books, and the ones that are based in research, I'm like, oh my gosh. But we're talking, they were talking about the power of habit and how you change habits, and that people need cues, and then they have their habit and they get this reward. And they were talking about how advertising marketing has used this, how brain researchers use this knowledge of just the basics of habit. And they said, you think if you knew that 3-part formula, then you would be good to go. But there's this craving that has to occur for somebody to want to start a habit or change a habit. It's not just having reward isn't big enough. It's got to be this desire, this craving. And so I thought that was perfect for what we were talking about today, because I wanted to start off with just the big gaping hole that I see for so many business owners in their business isn't knowledge, it's desire. What do you think about that? Is that what you see on the other side too?
I do, in a way, because I think what ends up happening is you're right. Like, a lot of times we overcomplicate things. We go and we study, we take all these classes, and it's like we've got this business knowledge, and then there's still this lack of clarity about where we're going. And I think what ends up happening a lot of the time is we buy into the larger culture, in this case, larger business culture's goals for us rather than our own goals and what we really want. And so this is one of the conversations I'm constantly having with one of my accountability partners, which is Stella Orange, who she's amazing. But this is a constant conversation of, wait, everybody says six-figure business, six-figure business, six-figure business, which, okay, yeah, six-figure business, but why? Yeah. Why six six-figure business? Why does that matter? And what if you don't want a six-figure business? What if you want a business that, just brings an extra like $2,000 or $3,000 a month, and it's a side project, and like you just want to do it well and not have to take up all your time? What if time is more important to you than money? Or what if you want to only make a large amount of money for a very short period of time and then have kid and like have that be sustaining, but then be able to like take a long maternity leave or travel the world or whatever? So I think we don't spend enough time with our own why and our own desire in our business. And it's really easy to get swept up in the business coach's goals for you, the people who are selling you marketing training, everyone who's got a business book, because they're bringing their desires to the table. And we all are looking around going, what should I want? What's okay to want? And this is true in business. It's true in sex. It's true everywhere, right? Like we're all looking around going, what am I supposed to be doing?
What's the right way, right?
What's the right way? And when you're a business owner, you're ultimately responsible for your business and for the life that you're setting up for yourself. I mean, and in sexuality, you're ultimately responsible for your sex life, for your sexuality, for your own sexuality. So I do tie these things together a lot, of taking responsibility for what you want and learning from the people around you, getting ideas from the people around you, but ultimately captaining your own ship. And I think this is really crucial in business because there's so much aspirational marketing out there that's actually designed to make us feel insecure about our businesses. I mean, and our lives, if you look at the bigger picture of marketing. But like, there's so much of it out there that's designed to make us feel insecure that it's really freaking easy to lose touch with why we started doing this in the first place and what it is we want our businesses to do for us.
You hit it on the nail in so many ways. And I tell this story of, I have this one client, and you would think that, I'm going to share case studies that are always the creme de la creme. Now, I had a client that was making $5,000 a year. The prior year she made 80 grand, then she made 5,000. And that's when she brought me in. You know what we got her up to? 80 grand. Okay. It doesn't sound like this big thing, but what we shifted was the profitability. So she could only work 80,000, but she was making 40,000 take home. And like you were saying, she was newly a grandma, so she wanted to be able to go be grandma. One of her children moved away. She wanted to be able to go visit him, and she still had a child in school that was being homeschooled and took ballet, and she had to be in the car all this time. So she didn't need that business, but it was really interesting. The reason why she got down to the 5,000, so interesting here, is she was trying for that six-figure business. She was trying for the $500,000 business that everybody told her she needed. Told her that she needed, and she bought into it. But it was so incongruent with who she was, what she believed about money, what she wanted for her family, that it ground her business to a halt. I mean, that's a big loss in a year. So exactly, I share her story because that's exactly what you were just talking about, is we can't take on everybody's idea of what a perfect, business should be. And I tell the listeners all day long, I don't want $1 million business. I don't need $1 million business. And I don't want to put in the time, money, and effort that it would take to create it. That's not me. And I'm okay with that. So there's that kind of interesting here. I know, sorry, my phone is ringing in the background, but
that's okay.
What is it, because we buy into other people's version of what our story should be or what our business should be, what is it that we're afraid to do for ourselves? There's a fear.
Well, I think there's a lot of pieces to this, right? Because most of us most people who get into being a business owner of any kind don't necessarily have that many role models in their family. Like I certainly did. I grew up with parents. One worked in nonprofit, one worked in corporate, and they were very successful in their careers, but it was a completely different world from what I'm in now. And so there's this interesting thing of like, well, we look around us and we go, well, I don't know who to trust, and I don't know what to want. And I don't know how to measure whether or not I'm quote unquote good enough. And this is my big soapbox, is like good enough and how we look to other people for good enough. But the questions I always ask are like, what's your measuring stick Who are you comparing yourself to and why?
Yeah.
And, you know, this is the thing I go on and on about in the Good Girl Recovery Program, which we'll talk about more in a minute, I'm sure. But it, you know, we don't, because it's new territory, we feel insecure. And because we feel insecure, we look around us and we go, oh, all of the marketing gurus say, all of the business coaches say, six figure. Well, they're also probably living in New York City or San Francisco or LA. Yeah. And they're also like, their cost of living is really high. And, and then the whole, you got to spend money to make money. That's one of my, like, like, if you're running a virtual business, you're going to have expenses, but that you do not need to lay out giant wads of cash. And I know that this is really unpopular among a lot of business coaches, but I don't think you need to lay out 15 grand for a mastermind club and, you know, all of this high level coaching. Like, you need to surround yourself with people who share your values and who are a little bit ahead of you. And if you do that, you'll be successful. And you need to get a coach who shares your values, not just somebody who's like, oh yeah, you can have this abstract goal that maybe you never even thought about before you ran into their marketing copy.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, and it takes a certain kind of self-knowledge that we're not really taught to have, because we're pretty much taught to doubt ourselves all the time by advertising. Yeah. My undergraduate degree is in public relations and PR
and journalism.
So I'm really interested in like how we construct these stories about the world that aren't actually our reality. So the thing I like to go back to is, how do you want it to feel? If you know how you want it to feel, then you can tell if you're on the right track or not. And I got really, really off track in my business for several years. And I learned this lesson the hard way. And please, those of you who are listening, don't repeat my mistakes. Think about how you want it to feel. What does success feel like to you? What does it give you? What does it feel like in your body? There's all these ideas, six figures, or, you know, mid six figures, or $1 million business, or, okay. Yeah. But money is just a tool. And I know people who have had $100,000 businesses that are wildly wealthy because they've streamlined their time and they've got their expenses low, and they have giant, you know, they take home $70,000, $80,000 a year. And I know people who have $1 million businesses who are running at a deficit every month. So your revenue doesn't tell you anything about what the quality of your life is going to be.
No.
So how do you want it to feel? What do you want that to do for you? Where do you want to? It's not where do you want to be in 5 years for external measurements, but what do you want the business to be doing for you in 5 years? For you, you're the one doing it. You're the one taking this risk. You're the one putting your time, your energy, your equity on the line for this. So it needs to be about you.
Amazing.
Not what other people. Yeah. What would please you? What would light you up? What would turn you on? And this is where we're into sex. Like, what would turn you on? What would be a hell yes? And if you're in that state of mind when you're thinking about your business, then it becomes a lot easier to do all the like day in, day out boring stuff that you have to do with your business, because you know why.
It completely. And this is, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you in, especially when I'm early on working with clients or talking to people, and I'll ask them, I'm like, what do you need? What do you need to take home? Because I'm going to tell you, hardly anybody's paying themselves. You know, it's like, what do you need? Well, I don't know. And I'm like, no. They're like, what should I have? And I'm like, no. I am not your banker. I'm just here to make the dream happen. But you have to pick the number, because if I pick the number and it's irrelevant to you or so high you don't believe in it, it's never going to work. But you have to tell me why. So I do like that kind of concept of, and then I have to go through do you want to go on vacation? And they're like, well, yeah, that would be nice. Well, where would you go? You know, it's like you have to help business owners learn to dream again. So that there's an important enough why to put up with a little crappy crap that happens in every business. You know, it's just a part of it. If you're not taking care of it, somebody's got to take care of it, you know, and get them back in. Now, do you think this is a problem that is more male or female dominated, or do you think men and women have the same issue with really getting in touch with this why and the desire behind things?
I'm going to pause for a second. Amy, can you mute yourself? Because Leslie is getting some weird feedback, and I think it was when you popped back on the line. Just I can't hear you, but I don't know. Anyway,
I muted her on this side, so we'll see if that worked.
All right. I actually can't speak to that. You know, I think that I primarily work in my colleagues are mostly women, and I do see it a lot with women. And the program that I run called the Good Girl Recovery Program, I have a lot of entrepreneurs in there who are struggling with this sort of internalized voice of the good girl. I actually don't hang out with that many male entrepreneurs. I can't really speak to that, and I think that it probably shows up differently. I actually think men probably do struggle with it, but I think the socialization around it shows up differently. Like, I think men have a harder time talking about that kind of stuff because there's so much more pressure to be successful. I think for women, there's a lot of pressure to not be successful, to like maintain a certain kind of smallness. But I do think both struggle with this desire piece. Like, how do I know what I want, and why am I doing this? Because I think there's this, everyone struggles with this performative element of what do I think I need to be for other people? And what other people think we should be is totally based on gender. Absolutely. You know, and I think that the way it shows up for women is very wrapped up in like super competing ideas of what success as a woman means, because we've been in this dialogue for the last 100 years of changing roles of women. And so there's, you know, the stuff that our parents taught us is from their generation, and they picked it up from their parents. So that's, you know, going back 70 years of what their parents learned. But we're also in this modern era where we have, you know, all these pushes for equal pay and taking up space. And, you know, we've been raised with Title IX, and we can play sports and do all these things. But we're still really trying to figure it out. And I think that there's just not a lot of role models for how to do it gracefully and well and in alignment with our own values. And I think that's true for men and women, but I think it really shows up differently for both.
Okay. I love asking that question because I get asked that question all the time, especially when I say, well, I work with women entrepreneurs. And they're like, well, you won't work with guys. What's so different? And I'm like, there's some problem, you know, there's some bigger hurdles that women have to overcome. And it's not that anybody's putting them down. A lot of it has to do within the internal discussion that's happening, these internal conversations that we have. And I know when you presented, you know, with Stella, and we had Stella on here maybe a month or so ago. So hopefully the listeners, if you haven't listened to that episode, go back because it's really great too. But you talked about these stages of desire and these kind of internal conversations that people have with themselves when they're trying to rationalize what they want. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Well, there's a few different ways that this goes on, right? So there's you know, I don't know what I want, and I don't know how to figure it. I don't know what I want. I don't know what to do, right? Like I have no idea where to start. And I think that this often happens. Like, you decide to start a business, you're like gung ho about it, you get everything set up, and then you're like, oh shit,
what did I do?
What am I doing? And it becomes really easy to even forget your why or even figure out what you're supposed to do because you're so overwhelmed with details, and everyone's like, you need to have a YouTube channel. You should have a Twitter feed. Are you on Snapchat? Are you on Instagram? Are you on Facebook? What do you have going on? And you're like, and you're trying to write your website, and you don't know what should be on your website, but you have to have a website, right? Right? Like,
no.
Of that, you know, all of that is going on in our heads.
Yeah.
And so we don't know, we lose track of what we want, or we never were that clear in the first place. We're just like running away from something else. And we don't know what to do. So that's one thing. Or maybe you know what you want, but you don't know what to do. You're like, I want to have a business where I am putting away $5,000 a month, and I have time, and
oh, well, we have lost Marcia here just as a second, guys. We'll give her a minute to come back on because she's sharing some great stuff about desire. But we're having Technology Day, aren't we, Amy? If you're watching video, you can see Amy say yes, but you will not be able to hear Amy. So I know we've got a few people watching that aren't live with us. Feel free to join live over here at Blab. And I'm just going to do a quick little shout out, and we'll see if, okay, Marcia popped off, so she'll come back on again. But we are talking about desire. And a lot of things that I work with clients on, we have to have this desire element. You have to want something in order for the work that we're going to do together to be worth it. And then we'll give Marcia just a second here. Hey, you're back.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
No worries.
Okay, so I was saying, so first thing is you don't know what you want, you don't know what to do. Second is you know what you want. You want time to hang out with your kids, you want money in the bank every month, you want to be working with XYZ kind of clients, or in this sort of retail market or whatever it is. But you don't know the steps. You're like, I don't know what to do. And so that's this whole, that's a stage of confusion, and it can be really disempowering. And that's actually a freaking great place to get a coach who knows how to implement.
Exactly.
And that's also sometimes where you want to get a project manager or a VA, because you know what you want, you just don't know how to do it. Get somebody else to figure out how to do it. Yep. Right? There's other people. Like I was talking with somebody the other day, and I was like, I think maybe I want to do a telesummit, but also I really don't want to do all the work in a telesummit because I am not a detail-oriented person, and that is a detail-oriented project. And my friend was like, oh, there's people you could just hire who just run telesummits. I was like, oh, genius, right? So you know what you want, but you don't know what to do. And then the third is you know what you want and you know how to do it, but for some reason you just can't get started and you can't bring yourself to do it. And if you're in that situation, it's more, that's more of where it's like, all right, maybe you actually have some conflicting values. Like the example you gave of the woman who's like trying for the 6-figure business, but was totally out of alignment with her values because she really wanted the time to spend with her grandkids or whatever. So it's like, I know what I want, and I know the steps to get there. Sometimes you might actually not have a values conflict. That is one of the places I do tend to check with people. Like, you say you want this thing, but what's really going on? Why are you not moving forward? Maybe you don't actually want it. Maybe it's what you think you should want. But if that checks out, is this actually the right plan for you? That's the next thing to check. Like, oh, these are the steps, but maybe there's a different way to get to your goal. That's a better one. That's you're more well-resourced for, or whatever. Or maybe you're just scared of getting it. Like, sometimes it's just really hard to get what we want. And I see this a lot in sex. I see this a lot in business. People are like, I want this thing, but I can't tell my partner that I want it. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because they might give it to me. And I'm like, well, what happened then? They're like, that would be too much. I don't know if I could actually handle it. I'm not used to getting that. And having what you want is a skill. Yeah. Like, actually letting yourself have it is a skill that, like, receiving. And this is where sex and business are completely tied together, because, the art of letting things in and receiving and allowing and enjoying and taking pleasure. We live in a puritanical work culture where you're only supposed to just work. Yep. You're not supposed to receive pleasure from your work. You're not supposed to receive, especially not the kind of pleasure we're talking about, where it's like, you get to have this. Yeah. The narrative we're taught is you're supposed to struggle. Yep. And so undoing that's like, life is just good. And this is actually the practice I'm in right now. It's edgy. It's like, I'm actually quite good in this in the sexuality realm, and I'm learning how to apply this in the rest of my life of like, oh, it could just be easy. Uh-huh. What? And it's not like, oh, it just is easy right off the bat. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I've made a lot of mistakes. But some of those mistakes were made because I thought it had to be hard. And if it wasn't hard, it didn't count. Exactly. Right? Oh my gosh. That's my soapbox. I'm like, you don't have to make your business any harder than it already is. It can be easy. It can be fun, and it can be profitable, but you have to be okay with that. Yeah, you have to be okay with it. You have to be okay with it. And I will talk to people, and you can see them go, yeah, that girl's smoking crack. She didn't know what she's talking about. I have to work harder. I have to. That's that whole hustle and grind, that's being sold in the entrepreneurship that kind of drives me a little nuts. If you are that, Gary V is on all the time. That man's got an incredible amount of energy. I can see how this is easy for him.
because it's in
Mm-hmm.
him. But it doesn't have to be, to me, it looks hard. It looks busy. It looks so frenetic that it's not easy for me. And so ease is such a key component of a successful business. If it's easy, it probably will make you a lot of money. If it's hard,
Yeah.
it's probably going to cost you a lot of money. And that's an important distinction I think we need to really embrace to be successful in business and to have your level of success, whatever that is. Is
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah, and I think this idea of easy is an interesting one, right? Because it's sort of this like, if it's easy, then there's no struggle, then it doesn't count, right? Like that's one piece of it. But then there's like, what do we mean by easy? Does it mean trivial? No, we're not talking about something that's trivial. Do we mean that it's pleasurable? Not always. Sometimes it's pleasurable. Sometimes it's not pleasurable. It's more about taking the path of least resistance to the goals you want. Yeah. And that's the thing that I think is really hard for people to wrap their heads around, because easy could mean a lot of different things. And I have my easy button.
That was easy.
That I do keep by my desk to remind myself, like, that was easy. It should be easy.
Yeah.
And whenever I get really stumped, I was talking to one of my other accountability partners this morning, and I was like, I have this to-do list this week because I was out of town last week, and I'm going out of town again next week, and it feels insane right now. And my first task this morning was, after I made my to-do list, was start sending emails asking for help. And it's not even noon here, and I'm already like, I'm on it because other people are on it. Like my sweetie's on break from school right now, so my sweetie's picking up the futon. I'm not doing it. Like all of these like little errands and things, easy, not complicated. There's a lot of, my to-do list is real long this week, but it doesn't have to be. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to do it in struggle. Like I work outside. I got a hammock. People started sending me like things I need to review. I go put my hammock up and I go lay in the sun and I read I do my work in the sun in the hammock. I don't have to be at my desk. This is why I'm self-employed.
Yes, so. Nobody said they had all these rules, but I mean, I love those examples, because one of my favorite quotes is, "Gone are the days when you can be successful in a silo." Yet it is the worst trait of an entrepreneur, is that we're so independent. We want to be in business, and then we get there and we figure out, oh, well, if I can't handle it all, if I can't do it all, then I'm not successful. And that's the biggest lie that we can tell ourselves. It's not
I told
about
that lie
working.
to myself for 10 years.
Oh,
don't
honey.
Do it, guys.
We could go on for days. My first business, but you have to really embrace this way of how easy can it be? How easy can it be? Because the other thing I think is the hardness makes people stop. It cuts off momentum, and I'm really passionate about there being momentum in a business. I was like, we have to have momentum in the business, because that's where the ease is in momentum. But if you're stopping every 5 seconds, then fits and starts just get old really, really fast. So we've got a few people that have been joining on. So I'm going to see if Amy, I'm going to just see if you don't have your mic on, but I'll go ahead and say howdy. So we have James, John, Jamie, maybe. We've got David Kutcher, Confluent Forms. Diane Moore is here. Hi, Diane. So good to have you guys here. Feel free to chime in. We've been talking about really what does desire have to do with being successful in a business. And if you've missed the first part of the episode so far, we've talked about, the stages of desire, but we've really talked about how desire is so crucial in you being able to be successful. And that desire is very personal, and you have the personal choice to have your business really do whatever you want it to do. So if it is make income, great. If it's giving you time and freedom, fabulous. If it's just joy and paying it forward in the world, groovy. There's really not a bad way to have a payoff in the business, but if you don't choose your payoff, you'll never get one. This is pretty much the straight up answer. So, Marcia, I want to go into this Good Girl recovery program. Talk to me about what really was the inspiring factor for coming up with this.
So it was really interesting. I used to do more straight up relationship coaching with people who are in non-traditional relationships. And I had this one client who I just loved. I just loved her. The stuff she was struggling with was just so fun and easy to work with her. And like, she was just a joy to work with. And she kept calling herself a good girl. She's like, I'm just such a good girl. And I started looking at, and I was really like tired of working with couples, and I really wanted to do more group work and individual work. And I was looking at my whole business, and this is a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I was like, who are my favorite clients? And she kind of came up, and I named the other clients. And then I realized that they all kind of had the same archetype. And then when I looked at my life, I realized all of my closest friends also had this archetype, which is essentially super accomplished in some aspect of their life, maybe not universally, because who is, but fairly accomplished, really yearning for something that they didn't feel like they were allowed to have because they wanted to keep everybody happy. And I started looking at it, and I dubbed it the good girl archetype because of this one client kept calling herself that. And I'm like, yeah, it's like you want to be polite, you want to be kind, you want to be generous, but what ends up happening is you end up being a doormat. Your boundaries are not that great, and you don't know what you want, and you don't know how to get it, and you're not really all that convinced you're allowed to have it.
Yep.
And I like looked back through all my client roster. I was like, holy crap, all of my favorite clients have this problem. And so I started writing about it on Facebook and just seeing if there's ever like if people would get it. And the first post I put, I didn't explain it at all. I was just like, if you have an inner good girl voice, what does she sound like? And I got 40 replies.
Wow.
They were like, oh, I can't do that. What will they think of me? I'll be too much. I'm not enough. And this too much, not enough thing came up. And I really I'm yearning for this growth in my sexuality, in my business, in my career. I'm so frustrated with my partner. God, my boundaries really suck. And a lot of them had stuff with a parent who was maybe like, yeah, there's people, yeah, don't do that. And yes, I'm not enough. Yeah, totally. Thanks for the comments. Yeah, so it's totally that voice that is internalized in a lot of women's heads, but especially like women who are raised to be quote unquote successful, but without this really clear definition of what success means because of these super competing messages. And I started doing more research on it, and Brene Brown writes out how shame is constructed for women. And I was like, oh, that's totally it. It's like this competing web of contradictory expectations. Be sexy, but not too sexy. Be successful, but not too successful. Speak your voice, but not so much that you scare the men. Like it's this
or hurt somebody's
feelings. Like the last thing you should ever do is hurt somebody's feelings. And so I was like, oh, wow, we really are hitting up on something. And I've always loved working with people and having better boundaries. I've always loved working with I actually do permission slips in my workshops. Like I have people write themselves permission slips, and I'm like, I will sign your permission slip. Like, what do you need permission for? And so it's just kind of like it all came together, and I was like, wow, I really want to put something together. So I created a 6-week program, which I'm going to start teaching next month. So if you want to get in on that, go download the free ebook that Amy just posted. It's Good Girl Gone Bad: 5 Ways to Tell if your inner good girl is running your life. And it's really just this 6-week course on what are you tolerating and how do you stop tolerating? How do you make space for life to be a little bit messier? Celebrating the stuff that's actually working for you, because honestly, good girls do not give themselves permission to celebrate or to brag. And like, this is a thing that and going back to the business piece, man, like, we have to be able to brag about our accomplishments, because how else are we going to sell? How else are we going to like put ourselves out there in the marketplace? How else are we going to be like, no, these are the results I get with my clients. Like, you should work with me. Yeah. And so, that ability to brag, to speak up, to honor your accomplishments is super crucial for business. But I think it's crucial even for women who are not entrepreneurs. Like, I think that this socialization we have to not take up space, not be too loud, isn't serving
anyone.
Well, it is serving some people, but it's not serving us. It's serving people who really, it's serving sociopaths, it's serving narcissists, it's serving people who, and these are the people that my clients come to me and they're like, oh my God, I'm realizing my ex was a narcissist or my former boss was a sociopath. And so like, I'm really a big believer that the less that women do these things unconsciously and only do them from a place of generosity and choice, which, I mean, I want kindness in the world. I want generosity in the world. But it's so much powerful when it comes from a place of, I know what I'm worth and I'm offering this, and I'm not going to offer it to you if you treat me like crap. So this is clearly my soapbox. I get very excited talking about it. And sexuality is completely a piece of that. We talk about sexuality and how owning your sexuality, even just being able to make some noise or moving your hips or like just taking up space or asking for what you want is a piece of overcoming the good girl. Because we all know the good girl doesn't want sex, even though as humans we do often want that. So it's all wrapped up in this package as a 6-week course, and I'm teaching it at the end of July, and I love it. And if you're interested, go check out the ebook.
So I want to give the URL in case people are listening to us on the iTunes, but the URL is goodgirlrecovery.com/ebook. And that is say the title again, Marcia.
Good Girl Gone Bad, 5 ways your inner good girl is running your life and what to do about it.
I love what you said at one point in time, of being able to come from a place of generosity and choice. And I think once I'm like, I'm kind of a good girl, but there's times I just don't care. And I've gotten myself in enough Dutch, either by choice or by circumstance that I know I'm like, nope, sorry, that's great. I don't care. Who cares? I'll be kind, but there's also a point to where I do defer to other people. And it's not because I'm trying to be the good girl. It's because I'm whole enough in this area that I can step back to allow somebody else in.
Yes.
And that's kind of, I guess, that advanced move type thing that once you've healed a lot to yourself, that you're okay that not everybody likes what you do or, has your same viewpoint. I'm going to say I'm money focused. I have always been since I was a little bitty girl. It is in my DNA. And while I'm not Scrooge and I'm not out to, take advantage of the world, it is one of my success markers. I'm okay with that. I feel like it's in balance in my check, but it's very interesting being a female, the response you get about that, it's like,
oh yeah,
why do you always talk about money? And I'm like, well, my brain calculates things that way. I can't really help it. It's just who I am. Why do you never talk about money? I never asked you that. Yeah. Like, why do you never talk about money? Let's be real here.
Yeah.
So I like that kind of vantage there. What's your favorite tip? Because I pulled out mine. I looked at this here. What's your favorite clue in there? Do you have one that you love more than the others?
The tolerations. I think like you tolerate a lot, and what is a tolerance? So what's a toleration? Like, I could hold this ruler. It's lightweight, but if I have to carry this ruler around with me everywhere I go, with everything I do, it's gonna be really hard to wash the dishes. It's gonna be hard to brush my hair. It's gonna be hard to take a shower. It's gonna be hard to drive. Like, it's this ruler, like, it's not that big a deal. It's not that big of a deal, but it's not that big of a deal, right? Like, we get this story in our head about it's not that big of a deal, but you add 100 or 1,000 of these, which we all have, even successful people tolerate. Everyone tolerates, but building an awareness of what you're tolerating. So the very first thing, it's in the ebook. You can go see a list of 50 things that my friends and I was just sitting around when I was writing the ebook. I'm like, what are you guys tolerating right now? And I just wrote down what they said. I threw a few of my own in there. But it's the first thing we do in the course is we look at what we're tolerating and then just start eliminating things. And it's crazy because, these things that are not that big a deal, you set it down, all of a sudden you've got a little bit more energy. You do that 3 or 4 more times, you got a lot more energy. Those other things that you're tolerating that are a little bit harder to deal with, suddenly you have energy to deal with those too, and it builds momentum. Yeah. And I think as women, as as people who are taught to be caretakers, as people who are taught to or who just have to. We've got to take care of our kids. We got to take care of our parents. We got to take care of people, whatever.
Yeah.
We're not taught to put our needs first. And I'm with Audre Lorde in the belief that self-care is a radical act of resistance. And it doesn't have to be like dramatic. It could be like literally just put the damn ruler down. Like,
yeah,
find a place for it, and like it can go there and it'll be there. You don't have to like carry these things, that squeaky door, that annoying friend who's always late. Like if you speak up about these things and address them once and for all, oh my gosh, so much more space. And we all have them in our business, and we all have them in our relationships, and we all have them literally around our living rooms and in our bedrooms.
Yep.
So,
and you know, it's so funny as you bring that up. And when I read this, last week was my client week. So I tend to have a week of clients, a week off from clients, and go back and forth with that. Well, last week was a client week, and the tolerating was huge because I had two of my clients are both tolerating staff members who aren't on board. Either aren't on board with technology, aren't on board with their responsibilities, and they've tolerated it. And, you know, it does seem, I think there's this point in time to where people tolerate something for so long, they feel like it's too late to stop tolerating it. And it is hard. It's hard for me, like, to tolerate something. And I'm like, I got to do something about it. I really don't want to do something about it, but I gotta, you know, because I've been in this situation. A lot of people are. When is it too late? Is there ever a time where it's too late? Or is that just another excuse we give ourselves?
I'm not convinced. I mean, maybe if you're on your deathbed, might be too late to fire that guy. I don't know. I feel like toleration. I'm firmly of the belief that tolerations get in the way of intimacy. They get in the way of connection. They get in the way of success. And these are all things I want in my life. And those are probably the order that I want them in too. If you really, I mean, I'm a relationship coach, so you're the money coach. I'm the relationship coach. That tells you everything you need to know about what we prioritize. Yeah. You know, and I think that I want people to have the lives they want, and if we're tolerating things we don't want, you will not have the life you want. And I don't mean be a bitch. I think that's the other objection that women have.
Agree.
Oh, I'll be a bitch if I say something. And that word, I mean, there's a lot of words we use for women who pursue what they want. And I always invite my clients to look at, well, who specifically are you worried about calling you that? Do you think that people who truly love you want you to suffer? And if you do, maybe you should have different people around you. That might be a thing you're tolerating. But if that's not what love looks like, love doesn't look like, oh, I'm okay with you suffering because it serves me. That's not love. That's self-serving. And so, you know, I think there's a lot of concern about, oh, won't that just make me a bitch? And that's why the tagline for the Good Girl Recovery Program is, it's not about being bad. It's about being you. And the more you tolerate, you can't find yourself. You have to like dig out from this pile of stuff that you're putting up with to find that great team member that's going to be amazing, or to find the partner who, I mean, everybody's, you know, we all round up to the one, as Dan Savage says. Like, there's no perfect partner, but you know, there's stuff that you tolerate because you don't think you can get any better, or because you don't think you deserve any better. And there's stuff you tolerate because you just think that person is so amazing. Yeah. That you're like, okay, so they snore, whatever, you know?
Well, and it's, you know, you just put yourself through more hell by tolerating. You really do. The only person that's in, and you can do everything from a good place, from a place of love. And I find that's a lot of times it's people have a hard time with, how do you word that, you know? And and then there's people that just rather complain. Yeah. And all and I'm always one to go, you know, I don't know that was that person's intent. It may be what you've perceived, but here's a way to find out, you know, so that you can, you know, choose what not to tolerate. When I made the notes for today's episode and I was going through, is clue number 2. And guys, you got to get the ebook. So it's at goodgirlrecovery.com/ebook and find out more from Marcia, because she gives you not just examples, but also some exercises to do, right? So that you actually can do something.
You can address it.
You can address it. But the clue number 2 is you defer to others instead of to your desires. And I think we've talked a little bit about this by choosing other, golden apples based on what everybody else says you should have. But I also see this as a non-commitment to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really interesting because I see people all the time who just stay in the land of nebulous or gray clouds because they don't want to make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I don't know, whatever you want.
Yeah.
I'm like, nope, can't do it. What is that? I'm like, what is that all about? Because Amy will tell you, I'll make a decision and I will need to think on some things some days. And when I'm like, it's not important to me at all, it means it's not important to me. I'm not going to, whichever way's easiest, go for it. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's so many people that are just afraid to make a choice one way or the other.
Well, this is an interesting one because I think some of it is just personality. You know, some of us just have strong personalities. Apparently, I was one of those people from a very young age. I also think that there's a lot of trauma and difficult experiences or just not supportive family environments where you're taught to second guess yourself. And I think for people if you've ever been in a place where teachers, parents, whatever made you doubt your reality, it's going to be really hard as an adult to make decisions. And so this is why I'm so big on having excellent boundaries and really practicing, starting with just practice saying no. And if you're a maybe to something, say no. And that's the first decision layer. Yeah. If you're a maybe, say no. That's why we start with tolerations, because that builds that decision-making muscle. And you can give yourself a rubric of, well, if I'm a maybe, I'll say no, because that keeps space open for me to say yes. Or if you're somebody who feels really stuck in a rut in your life and you're really bored and you don't know what to do, if you're maybe, say yes for a week and see what happens. But just having a rubric helps you build the confidence on your decision making. And having excellent boundaries helps you, because boundaries is a piece about decision. People who are not great with boundaries have a really hard time deciding things. And that's not a failure. I want to just point that out. That's not a failure. It's a skill that needs to be learned.
It is a skill.
Yeah.
It is a skill. And, the most successful people say no more than they say yes.
Yeah.
And I am a big proponent of no is not a bad word. And it is a complete sentence. No, period. Complete sentence. I know. I love that card. I love that card.
It's on my main blog at askingforwhatyouwant.com. It's probably my most popular blog post. People love that.
And what's the name of the blog post so people can look at it?
If you just Google 12 ways to say no gracefully and asking for what you want, it should come up first.
Awesome. So what's your favorite way to say no?
Oh, honestly, at this point, I've practiced this so much that I like it when I can say the no that is the most true no to the moment. Yeah. So sometimes it's I got an email from a guy who I had met at a workshop that I was teaching, and he sort of sent me this very weirdly worded proposal, and I had kind of a weird vibe off of him, and his email was actually slightly manipulative. And he was like, if it would interest you, I would love to do this thing that is entirely on my terms. That's not literally what it said, but I'm good enough at this point to be able to read things. And I was like, I just replied, thank you for emailing me. That doesn't interest me. Have a great day. And I just used the word that he used. And in that case, I actually felt like I had to set a very hard boundary because he definitely seemed like a pusher.
Yeah.
And I didn't want pushing, and I have not heard from him since. And I'm okay with him thinking that I'm a bitch, because I don't need to please people just because they're there or because they're a man. I just don't. It's taken me a long time to get there, but I really just don't care. Kind of like you. But I also really like the much more gracious no's. With my partner, sometimes it's I need to build more trust before we can do that. Can we work on can we practice some other things before we take on that big project or whatever.
Yeah.
There's the link. Thanks, Amy. Or just being honest, I don't have the internal resources to pull that off right now.
Yep.
That's probably one that, especially when it's used honestly, it's completely, no one can argue with me about it. because it's my experience. And I'm setting a clear boundary. It's like, I don't have the resources, or in a business context, you may not have the business resources to pull that off.
Mm-hmm.
And
or the time.
Time being a resource, or the money, or the staff, or the whatever, the interest. So, that can be a really powerful way to say no, when it's true. And then I also teach my clients, when they're new at it, actually to enroll the people around them and supporting them with their no. So, just owning, like, hey, it's actually really hard for me to say no, and it's something I'm practicing right now. I'm going to say no for now.
Yep.
Because I want to leave the option open later in case I change my mind, or in case, and I actually invite you to ask me again later, because it'll be good for me to say no again if I'm still a no.
Yep.
And so there's you can actually enroll the people around you in practicing these skills.
Yeah.
Not everyone. Sometimes you got pushy people in your life, and those are not the people that you want helping you with your personal growth. But the people that really care about you will probably be quite supportive of that. And you'd be surprised how much, if you tell somebody you're working on something, they're like, "Ooh, I want to help."
Yeah, it does get everybody on the bandwagon, and they're like, "Oh, that was a great way to say no." But no, I think is a hard concept for a lot of women. And Amy knows this, but I got called into a teacher principal conference because my child said no. And I was like, and I looked at them and I went, I don't think no is a bad word. And they both went, oh, and I went, now he can be respectful. And if he's not being respectful, then we have an issue. But the word no in my family, I mean, the world would be so much better if we just said no. No, I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. No, that's not something I can do. No, you can't treat me like this. All these things. I mean, no to our employees, no to our partners, physical, whatever. It's a really quite freeing word when it's used in a good context. And just because we're talking about being called a bitch and referred to a bitch, I got to share my most favorite definition of that.
Please do.
Being in total control of herself.
Nice.
That is, I just got busted for cussing in our household. My youngest is over there. He's like, don't say that word, Mom. But that's anytime I've ever had somebody call me that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm actually pretty kind. I'm overly kind. But if that's the way you think of, I will take that because I take it as a compliment. It just means I'm in control of myself and you're having a hard time with that. And that's okay. It's like, okay. So every time I hear that, that's what goes through my brain. Being in total control of herself. And now, if I'm walking around going, being in total control of herself, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I'm from the South. We were taught to say that's nice whenever or bless her heart, whenever we're really being mean. So, and I actually really appreciate the knowledge that when I'm being called names, it's because someone else is trying to control me and my behavior. And that is their very inarticulate way of trying to get their way. It's childish.
It's like a two.
And I spend a lot of time on social media, and I work in a fairly controversial field, and it is not uncommon for my colleagues, less so me because I don't do stuff so directly related to like actual sex, but I'm around sexuality. I am a sex educator. And so it's very common for my colleagues to get death threats. And it's pretty scary actually doing a lot of the work that I do and being in the world that I'm in. And it is incredibly comforting to me to realize like those, and I bring compassion to tables. Like when people start calling names, it means they're scared. Yeah. They're losing control. Yeah. And they want safety. And so when somebody starts calling you names or trying to manipulate you, it's not because you've done something wrong. It's because it's not going their way, which may or may not be the right way. Yeah. So
that's really interesting. I don't think I've ever really thought about that as a controlling mechanism. But that's exactly what it is. It's so, I'm sorry, but it's so empowering when you stand strong and you almost just laugh, and you're just like, okay. Moving on, tell me when you're ready to be a human again, come back, or when you're ready to be 40 or 50 or however old you are,
Yeah.
come back. Because last I knew we weren't on the school playground.
Right.
We're out here in business. Now, guys, we still have a few people on. If you have any questions for Marcia, please feel free to let us know. We've been having some great conversation, and we're getting down to the end of the show, but I would love for y'all to do that. We have been talking about Marcia's ebook, and that you can find that at goodgirlrecovery.com/ebook. And then as well as Amy's been gracing us with some of the links, like on the 12 ways to say no gracefully. So I think that's really cool. In just kind of wrapping up, what is the one thing? I love the one thing. I'm all into simplicity here. What is the one thing that somebody listening to this could do to, to take a next step for them and get more in touch with the desires that they have in their life and for their life?
I would say that the number one thing I always ask people is, how do you want it to feel? How do you want it to feel? And when I do this every time I do a project, and when I don't do it, it never goes as well. So how do I want this project to feel? How do I want this business relationship to feel? How do I want this client relationship to feel? How do I want my business to feel this time next year? How do I want it to feel when I give out that business card that says total badass on it? I was so nervous to do that because I so rarely need business cards, but when I need them, it's always in some different context.
Yeah.
I don't really do a lot of in-person networking. So, and when I do, I'm usually like, give me your phone, I'll put my info in and you can have it. Right. So business cards are not a thing that I need. So I was like, oh, I'm going to get really high quality cards because that'll feel good. And they're going to have like gold, embossing on them. And they're going to have curse words on them and they're going to be playful. Because that's kind of who I am, is I'm goofy and a little bit like indulgent. So I wanted the goofy indulgent combo. And I was like, how do I want this to feel? Because I never had business cards I ever felt like great. I was just like, ugh, I've got to get this out. Ugh.
Yeah.
And so my marketing, it's like, I want to give out things that feel good to give out, and then I'll give them out. Oh, hey, look at that. So much easier to give out, so much easier to talk about myself when I'm carrying around my postcards and permission slips and curse word business cards.
I loved it. I really do.
And the other thing is, it filters out the people who are not for you. Like, if you're doing it the way you want to do it, and people are like, what is she doing? Those are the people you don't want to work with anyway. So, well,
and it's the truth of it. And it's especially in small business, this niche thing that everybody's always chasing is really about the fact that you have to be so strongly you. That really is your niche. It's what separates me as a business coach from somebody else. If I'm so uniquely me, then I'm going to attract the right people. But when you're wishy-washy, it's like I always say, if you ever say anyone or everyone, you're actually saying no one, because it's so nebulous that people can't attach it. You want them to go, that's me. I love her. She's a badass, and I'm a badass too. It is that identification, and that's one of the key things into marketing. Well, I know thank you so much for your time, guys, and chat. Everyone in our chat, thanks for hanging in with us and chatting and letting us talk about sex, business, desire. Diane says, great show. Thanks so much, guys. We had a lot of fun with this. But so be sure to get Marcia's free gift at thegoodgirlrecovery.com/ebook. And as always, if you're looking for ways to double your business in the next 90 days, then start out with the Marketing Quick Fix, just 87 different strategies that you can use. And guess what? They all work. You just have to find the one that works for you.
Find the one that's fun for you.
Fun for you. Fun. Oh my gosh, this is what I can't. If it's easy, I'm like, if it's easy, if it's fun, and if it's in your wheelhouse, you'll get a result like this. But if you have to go learn it and figure it out, you're just delaying the results. And business is about being able to grow quickly and easily and fun, because that's how you feel more growth. So that Marketing Quick Fix is just at yourbizrules.com/marketing quick fix. Thank you so much for being on the show, Marcia. I had a blast. I know Amy.
I did too.
Amy couldn't chime in with us, but she was laughing her little screen off over there. So that's all, guys. Be sure to join us back here every Monday afternoon, except for not next week because it's a holiday. So I do not work on holidays. I don't know about you. I go have fun with my family. So we won't be here on the 4th, but we'll be back on the 11th. And feel free to join us on Blab at 1:30 in the afternoon. Good gravy. Or on iTunes over at the Healthy Business, Healthy Family podcast show. Thanks so much, guys, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.